Hello and welcome to our instructional series of videos. In this installment, we'll show you how to replace the PCIe SSD in 11-inch MacBook Air models from mid-2013 and later using an OWC Aura SSD. We'll be demonstrating this upgrade using a mid-2013 model. If you have a later model, you may notice some variances on the logic board and battery, but the SSD install process is the same across all models. We've already backed up our data, shut down and unplugged the MacBook Air, and we'll be working on a soft static-free surface. We're now ready to begin. The first step is to close the MacBook Air and flip it over. On the bottom are 10 5-point screws to remove with your pentalobe screwdriver. The two center ones on the hinge edge are longer than the others, so let's remove those first. Next, remove the remaining 8 screws. We can now lift the bottom cover off. There's a snap on the underside near the center, so you may have to pull a bit to detach it. Before removing the SSD, we'll first need to detach the battery connector, which is located here. To detach the connector, gently lift up on the edges until it comes free. To remove the SSD module, you'll first need to remove the single Torx T5 screw holding the end in. Once the screw is removed, you can gently slide the SSD module out of its socket. You can now set the original SSD aside, or you can reuse it for data migration, storage, and backup with an Envoy Pro external enclosure. Depending on the model Aura SSD you have, there may be a heatsink or thermal pad on it, though it may vary in size, shape, and positioning. If your SSD has a heatsink or thermal pad, it's very important that you don't move or remove it, or else you risk damaging the Aura and possibly your MacBook Air. The notch on the Aura corresponds with the pin in the socket. Simply line the two up and slide the Aura into the socket until it's fully seated. Then, make sure the Aura is laid flat and secure it in place with the Torx T5 screw. Finally, reconnect the battery by lining up the connector and simply pushing it back into its socket. You can now set the bottom cover back into place and push on it to re-engage the clip. We can now replace the screws that hold the bottom in place. Start with the two longer screws which go in the center on the hinge edge. You can now replace the remaining 8 screws, which are all the same size. You may now flip your MacBook Air over, open it up, and turn it on.